Okay, thank you. So hereby I call the first speaker of the opening government. Time is yours.
Okay, my favorite method of UI, just turn on your mic, but don't be spamming. I will let you if I think I have enough time. I have no preferred gender pronouns. Let me set my console first. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Panels. Before moving to point of substantive, as a prime minister, it's my job to give him set up in this debate. I will explain you several keywords in these motions. First, about legalizations. We say, as a prime minister and as a opening government, we believe that legalizations doesn't mean that we want to encourage every people or every, for example, people who believe on this polygamy as a source of you to get mercies from God and so on and so forth as a practice of several Muslim people and so on and so forth. We don't want to encourage them. What we want is to legalize, meaning that we want to have legal standing in this practice of polygamy. I will explain to you why this is the importance of legal standing in of legalizations in this practice of polygamy and how it can mitigate the problem of polygamy that we currently believe and so on and so forth. Second of all, I want to explain to you about polygamy itself. We believe in this context, practice of polygamy is consensus. So there is no argumentations at all coming from the opposition bench who might say that this might be relasi kuasa and so on and so forth. There will be their ustaz or their teacher who encourage them to marry them and so on and so forth. So it's not like that. Because why? Because we believe that in Western democracy country, they are believe on this individual preference and so on and so forth. Second of all, we think that even if you are in a Western democracy country, which is very progressive place, there are still people exist who believe on this polygamy itself as a source of them to get happiness, as a resource of them to like applying sunnah, for example, as their belief in Muslim, for example, and so on and so forth. That's the explanation of polygamy. Third of all, we say that in Western democracy country, we believe that they are very less in representations, right? So this is important as a feminist movement, as a progressive community, to make inclusive and represent people who unrepresented, including people even if they are non-Muslim, but they all want to apply this practice of polygamy. We want to make them inclusive through our community. Let's move into point of substantive. I only bring one argumentation, which is principle, but I have 3 layers in here. First, let's move into first layer. In terms of inclusivity of feminist value, we believe that as a feminist movement, this is the importance for us to being inclusive. Because why? Because it is important to for us in order to achieving our agenda. Because if you are inclusive, meaning that you have big possibility to get a lot of number of member, right? This is important for you to give or do massive actions in terms of giving awareness through our agenda. We believe that in feminist, as we all know, that feminist agenda have several agenda, which is to make people and embracing individual preference or make women get their empowerment, and we want to attack the patriarchy value and so on and so forth. What is the problem? Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that Muslim people got mocked continuously by their religious practice. We believe that several Muslim in Western democratic country also believe on that kind of things. Yes, CEO.
Do you think feminists should support politicians that are women but conservative?
No, we don't think so. We don't need to support them. Because why? Because they will like menghambat our agenda and so on and so forth. Let me explain to you later in my substantive. so that is important for us to make them inclusive in our community, because why? Even if they are Muslim, not all of them is conservative who attacking the values of feminism itself and so on and so forth. Even if there are still of them who very conservative, this is important for us to be open for them to advocate their values. Because why? By legalizing this practice of polygamy, meaning that they are feel included to this community itself. If they are feel included, it is easier for us to approach them, to tell them how to be what is the feminist movement itself. Because the reason of why they are attacking them, because they are less representative of this feminist movement. They are only protecting minority who have, like, for example, LGBT and so on and so forth. Then the Muslim conservative is less represented, right? So yeah, we believe that there are several Muslim people who believe on this polygamy itself. But the problem is that the practice of polygamy, it's not in line with what actually should be do or did or done in polygamy itself. For example, they are unequal to their wives and so on and so forth. Second, in this inclusivity, I will expand you on how we will increasing the number of feminist member itself. We say even if the number of Muslim people or people who believe on polygamy is very less in progressive country, but they are still exist, right? This is the importance for us to take them as a part of us. Because why? Because this is the way we want to give them preaching on how we want to, like, giving personal talk and so on and so forth, or what actually feminist value itself and so on and so forth. So that's easier for us. Second of all, we want, as a feminist movement itself, our strategy will address to people to embracing their individual choices, right? Because feminists also rising the value of individual choice. Then why you are still mocking Muslim people or women who practice this value of polygamy itself? Polygamy doesn't make problems to another society. Polygamy is consensus. So even if there are problems in polygamy, for example, in equality, domestic violence, and so on and so forth, it can be mitigated by our proposal. Why? Here's the second layer of this principle: the importance of legalizations. Because we believe that by legalizations, it means there are process of government setting prerequisite or terms of conditions that you have to fulfill if you want to practice this polygamy itself. What is that? For example, you have to be equal to all of your wives. Second, you don't have at all domestic violence track record. Your economic conditions is very stable. You have to stable job and so on and so forth, so that you can nurturing your child properly, or you can giving house needed to your wife or your family and so on and so forth. That's important to be fulfilled, right? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the Prime Minister, and reminder for all the teams, your speaking time only at 7:20 at max. After 7:20, all the judges will not write down all your arguments. So yeah, that's it for the PM. To open the case from up, I call the leader of opposition. Time's yours.
Test. Am I audible, Kak?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, opening government doesn't explain you on how the process of them to advocate this kind of policy, this kind of things. Would like to they never explain to you what are the activity that feminists would like to doing of this kind of advocacy. This is the BOP that should be proved by the opening government itself. But the second itself, ladies and gentlemen, the moment opening government are saying that they would like to, under the result of this kind of policy will increase the followers of the feminism, especially in the Muslim community itself. 3 responses. We say first, we say no. Second, why? Because even if, for example, you are agree with the polygamy itself, but as the feminism itself, you still also critics or contra or what several belief that Muslim conservative belief itself. See, for example, women should be tunduk for their suaminya, for example, or women should be stay in their homes, not going to work in that company itself. You still like contract this kind of agenda itself. This is proof to you on how, even if, for example, you agree with the polygamy system, but don't want but you critique the activity that this kind of several conservative are believe itself. This is hard for you to like giving to like take the pattern of this kind of conservative, because you still contract the several agenda itself. But even if, for example, you achieve the like Muslim community like opening government, we say, even if, for example, this happens, but you will lose because there are a lot of people are not allowing the polygamy itself. I will explain you more in my substantive argument. There just one point in my speech, which is first, we say that this is not in line with the goals of feminism itself. The goals of feminists is to express the value of women, like to fight the patriarchal system, sexual harassment, or other than that. Other than that, the agenda of feminists is to give the equality for women and men itself.
Why?
We say that this is not in line with your this is not in line with your agenda as a community that perfect equality for women. I will explain to you why polygamy is the part of the discrimination of women itself. Why? Because as a man, you divide your love in a different people itself, in a different women itself. You never, no thank you, you never give the equality itself. I believe that you never bring the equality itself to your woman itself. It means that you don't give the equality itself. It means this is proof for you on how under team government you also give the like merendahkan women itself, right? But even if, for example, government say that there is a no, thank you. There's another things like the economic sector to begin with itself that this create polygamy itself. We say this is not as a this is not the burden of you as a man to help these kind of things, right? Because there is a government, there is the institution that would like to help this kind of women itself. But if so, even even if the government say that the economic sector is a purpose of polygamy itself, we say this is not correct itself, right? So we say that this is bad, for example. Why? Because the country, like in a Western democratic country, the case of the or the problems like KDRT or this or harassment towards the wife is high, right? This is the we say that we say the moment this kind of happens, there is a tendency that this kind of case would like to like more hike to begin with itself. This is better. This is better because as a community you should fight these kind of things, not agree these kind of things, right? But so B, we say there's another issue that you should that you should advocate to begin with itself, like patriarchal system, like sexual harassment, like relasi kuasa, that these kind of the status quo, these kind of case are more important to begin with itself. Look, in a USA, for example, the case of like the catcalling still happens since the past. This is proof to you on how the case the case like the case like catcalling is still happens. This is proof to you on how the discriminations in the KDRT would like to still happen to this kind of family itself, right? We say that under team opposition we this kind of problem itself, like try to find an effective solution itself. Because in the past, we are not going to like giving the or find a good solutions to you on how there is another issue, there is another thing that we try to advocate before. Why this is going to be important? And I think opposition, we can focus to solving this kind of issue. Under team government, the focus of you as a community would like to giving the extra focus to begin with itself. You don't, maybe for example, you don't give the capacity to like giving the significant impact towards the polygamy itself. Why? Because under team government, the moment you are allowing this kind of polygamy itself, you will you not, your responsibility not only just to allow this kind of thing, but how you can make sure that this kind of women would like to having the equality under the partner, under the relation itself. So at the end of the day, we conclude that this is not in line with the goals of feminists, but B, there's another issue that you should advocate before first before you try to add the new issue to begin with under team feminist Islam. So based on the reason, proud to oppose.
Thank you for the leader of opposition for that speech. To extend the case from government, I call the Deputy Prime Minister here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Starting my POI through unmuting yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I don't think that it is really simple for all to come up here in this debate and just say that, okay, like we need to give equality to women. We need to give some sort of value to women when it comes to feminism. We don't necessarily explain to us why is it more important than our case, or why is it then going to be much better under OO. I challenge DLO to come up here in this debate and explain why all of things can be achieved under the side of the house, right? But secondly, let's deal with all of the idea that they explain. Firstly, their main idea is about how, for example, in Western democracy, there are still things like power relation, where you're getting discriminated because you're women, things like catcalling and so on and so forth. Number one, I think that this is really dismissive towards the status quo, because we think that number one, in Western democracy, women can access jobs. Secondly, we think that companies in current status quo, especially in Western democracies, are being cancelled when, for example, their companies are only filled with men, for example, or they're also being cancelled when they are, for example, like not allowing women to have like pregnancy leave and so on, maternity leave and so on and so forth. But thirdly, in the current status quo, women can also pass their own lawsuit when it comes to things like sexual harassment, sexual abuse, or when, for example, their husband cheat and so on and so forth. But number four, but even if you do not believe all of those things, number four, in lawsuit, for example, you can still also win, right? Because you have the law system is a little bit different, because in there you have jury will be the one that assess your own case, for example, and decide the best. So that jury can also be good to the extent that they can relate to your position. They can also vote to you to the extent that the perpetrator can also basically get guilty when it comes to these lawsuit charges when they do sexual harassment and so forth. All of those four things prove to you in the status quo that such thing that OO tried to bring about power relation, where a lot of urgent things, for example, about women can access jobs and so forth, is not true at all. Right? I also challenge OO why they think that it is something that is true. But secondly, their only case is only highly contingent upon catcalling, which I don't necessarily think that catcalling is too much, is to the degree of extent that we can generalize all women that they are being oppressed, right? But two things. I'm going to explain to you why, in the end of the day, OG is going to cater feminists more when it comes, especially postmodern feminism, right? Very simple. First, I'm going to explain to you historically. Historically, first wave and second wave feminism, one woman as a leading actor, for example, there are things pushing better better legal standing, for example, for women. Women can now break up engagement when their husband cheat, for example, or things like they can now have their own property and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say this is that in postmodernism, especially current feminism, you think that the shift is no longer on how we can make women as a leading actor or can be more equal to men. Because within that when it comes to equality, women are already as equally as with men, right? Because they can now access job and all of those things. They can still survive on their own, just like what I explained before. Therefore, within that, it is highly better for us to focus on the third wave feminism and post-feminism, especially current feminism, when we cater more towards women's freedom of choice. We think that women can be whoever they want, whatever they want, right? But we think that it is really important for us to cater more, especially individuals who have been left out by feminism, especially individuals like what NASA said about, like, for example, like women who believe in polygamy or Muslim in those countries who are left behind by feminism, right? But secondly, opposition might try to come up here and say it's going to degrade feminism because of things like, yeah, you're going to succumb to men and so on and so forth. Number one, this is untrue because this is just a basic freedom of choice. But secondly, Nasser already explained there's going to be like things like, yeah, basically better legitimacy for women, for example, like better regulation and so on and so forth. This already debunks that idea. But thirdly, we think that even if there is the case, we're willing to take the trade-off and for more leverage for feminism, because number one, we're going to have better participation. We're going to talk like better participation from people from gray area, for example, like women for part of society that get into polygamy, for example, mostly like what Nasal say, why they will take part into our cause. Number one, it is in line with their religion. Number two, they no longer feel left behind, because post-feminism so far only focuses on freedom of choice of women when it comes to clothing, for example, campaign on freedom of choice on clothes, freedom of choice on skincare, makeup, plastic surgery, and so forth, which does not really cater towards interests of these people. Therefore, it is important for us to come up here and then, like, we get their attention, especially them who are in so far has been left behind. Therefore, we think that it is highly likely that they are going to take part in our campaign, right? But second reason why people will participate, especially people in gray area, is that because this kind of narrative is not offensive. Because like we're not going to do things like, we're not going to attack men, right? We're not going to say things like, yeah, we really hate men because we have patriarchy and so on and so forth. Unlike opening opposition who want to fight patriarchy, which is really hard to begin with because of how, for example, they have more power to begin with. They have more leverage in politics, for example. If they want to fight patriarchy and fight men as a whole, I don't necessarily think why then can get their own like agenda to pass to begin with, right? And it will only like lead to them losing more support under OO. But lastly, on vulnerability, within that in current status quo, especially women who are in part of like polygamy, for example, they're being attacked, they're being like hated by society, they are being like over generalized by society, for example. Like people say that they are useless, for example, or people say that they are just only being like succumbing to men and so on and so forth. I think that it is really important for us to cater those people who are more vulnerable. But the way here is that under our side, we cater people who are more vulnerable compared to OO, where they only like want to cater people who so far are not that vulnerable. They can already access jobs. They can already do those things. Then the way here is more important on OG because we cater more people who are more vulnerable. So proud to propose.
Thank you for the DPM. To extend the case from opening up, I call the deputy leader of UP. Time is yours.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so advocations means that supporting certain things that represent them in individuals or as a group. In Western democracy, we need to understand that even though they are Muslim, the polygamy is less likely to happen. In such individual society, to cop into polygamy is not going to work, and many people will not going to accept it, since the reason of polygamy itself is not clear. Even though in Muslim there are they are minority, is not going to give them any advantages if the feminism is going to advocate the legalization of polygamy in Western democracy itself. Before going to my argumentations, rebuttals. So what the government said is about no, there will be no encouragement when when advocations is exist, means that the representations is exist, means that the value of feminists is being questioned. The representations will lead to encouragement because of the discussion of feminist community who are progressive in the individual society, that that are progressive enough to understand that feminism is actually is a well-known community. Secondly, is about it is better it our side will be better because our goal is to avoid bad stereotypes towards feminists and those marriage relationship, because feminists who have a big portray in our society is going to supporting and going to advocate this kind of things. I will elaborate more under my substantive materials. Going on towards firstly about it is inappropriate. The advocation is not going to give any advantages towards our community or the marriage relationship itself. We need to understand that the value of feminist is to giving to is to give equality towards man and woman itself. But in marriage relationship, when we go to a polygamy marriage relationship, we need to understand that a polygamy marriage will be more, those those men will be
Point.
more no those men will be more have more power to control their wives, since they understand that they could have two women and in the same marriage, means that they have more power to control those women, right? Therefore the harassment will actually occur. Ladies and gentlemen, those kind of suffer that experienced by women is not going to be is not the point of or the value of our feminist community itself at the very first place. In cop with that, in Western democracy country is actually having more divorce and harassment cases in each years. We need to understand that we are in the Western democracy country itself is individuals, and the cases of and the cases of the divorce and harassment is occurs under their side. And also being in and also by supporting by feminists advocating this kind of legalizations of polygamy in Western democracy is means that they are being inconsistent to the value of feminist, which is equality. Polygamy is a form of a relationship who is involved two women in one marriage. There are no guarantee of equalizations occurs in this relationship at the first place. The understanding of polygamy concept is not well known in the Western community. Therefore, the toxic discussion will only going to occur under the side of the governments if they still wanted to let the feminists advocate these kind of things. Polygamy is not bad or not going to be harmful towards women, but we understand that in terms of having it in the Western democracy, which have no clear reasons why they want to do polygamy, is not going to help you to it's not going to help you to bring the rights of the polygamy or not, or to advocate them at the very first place. Therefore, we stand. Thank you.
Thank you for the Deputy Leader of UP. So to open the closing half, I call the Member of Government here. MG, Member Government.
Am I audible?
Oh yeah, you're audible.
uh, I'll start. I prefer POI through unmute yourself, and I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First, I have one independent responses to the opening government. First, when they say that polygamy is a form of patriarchy, therefore feminism should not support polygamy. We do think that it is not. Polygamy is more than patriarchy. It is a form of religious practice that liberalism should support, in which that liberalism should allow the religious liberty of women, right? Maybe you are saying that, oh, polygamy is a form of patriarchy and unfairness is because you are seeing the polygamy in a lens of liberalism, in a lens of feminism, right? Yeah. So we don't think that it is true, and I will explain that later. Secondly, they said that there are no guarantee of fairness in polygamy, in which I understand for opening opposition to bring, because opening government did not explain to you how they can maintain the fairness inside of polygamy, in which we are going to explain in our setup. So the problem with feminism in Western democracies is that we understand that Western countries are more open to feminism values, but it is still not inclusive. It is still centralized to liberal and atheist women, right? Second, they see polygamy as a very harmful practice. So yeah, which might be true, but it's still a stereotype. Therefore, people there are over demonizing the practice of that. This makes it illegal to have a polygamy there. The problem here is that there are still practices of polygamy, regardless of it being illegal. But in opposition world, these practices are done secretly without any legal regulation and protections. Why? Protection. Why? It is because religious practice. It is because the belief of religious practice, right? So therefore, even if it is illegal, you cannot stop them from doing it. Okay, feminism acclaim themselves to be the most open-minded organization. We think that if you were open-minded, therefore you should support different religious liberty, including allowing myself to do polygamy, for example. So that our sense is clear, we want to legalize by creating a systemic law to regulate. Okay, what are the things that we want to regulate that open government did not explain? First, a signed letter of consent that must be signed in front of the legal representation by the wife, right? Second, to set a set of obligations for their husband to fulfill. Three, to set a right of this wife to hold their husband liable, to hold their husband accountable. So therefore, we are going to give them a medium to, for example, to hold their husband liable if they are not fair inside of the polygamy. Four, to judge is the husband is economically and mentally able to do polygamy. By doing a credit score check, we mathematize their salary, to check their salary. Is this enough for two wives? And also to give them a psychological test, to test are they mentally stable enough to do polygamy. These four mechanisms answer the fairness that opening opposition demanded, right? Okay. So what is then the interest of feminists? We do think that the interest of feminists is that to spread awareness and protecting the rights of women. In order to protect the rights of women, we should support the legalization, because without legalization, this set of regulations that I have explained before never happen. People can just do polygamy secretly and not taking an economic check, a mental check, right? So yeah, so in order to grant this kind of woman the protection, which we must legalize this law, right? So two arguments that I will bring today. Firstly, why it is justified? Because we think that feminism should have more inclusivity. Muslim women oftenly left out in feminist. We don't think that it is that's justifiable, right? Is because feminism roots from liberalism, in which the ideal liberalism should protect different religious liberty, not only centering themselves in, with atheism, right? It should support different religious liberty, because in this era of postmodernism, it is not possible to create generally accepted morals, right? Because it cannot exist. Therefore, we should not try to so hard to create a generally accepted morals and just let everyone chooses what they wanted to choose. Yeah, but even if you try to create a generally accepted morals, we believe that it is going to be discriminative towards religious people. Second, we do think that there are women who is willingly choose to have to be polygamy because simply because it is a religious practice, right? Okay, in Western countries, people did polygamy secretly. So that the output is that second and tertiary wife cannot hold their husband liable and accountable for any of their injustice. So therefore, it is worsened under their side of the house. Even if it is not legalized, husband has a chance to run away from the responsibilities. It allows bad polygamy to exist. It allows people to do polygamy without any economic and psychological background check, right? Even if there might be some backlash, oh, why are we supporting the woman objectification? We don't think that we are supporting the woman objectification, but what we are supporting is we are supporting the woman liberty, because it is just the same principle that is used for feminism to support sex workers. We support them because it is their liberty, not because we support the woman objectification. Same principle applies here. Second argument, why it is then important to support polygamy to protect those vulnerable women is because these women who falls into polygamy are mostly unaware of feminism in a way, and also they are mostly accepting the polygamy because they are in economic deprivation, right? These men in opposition world, these men can just come to this kind of woman to say, hey, I can help you with this kind of with your economic problem if you wanted to be my second wife. They can lie to this kind of woman. In our world, these men cannot lie. We have to check their economic background. Are they really able to support this kind of this second wife economic needs or not? Because the roots of unfair polygamy is when they cannot fulfill their economic obligation. So yeah, that's why we believe that it is better to support polygamy to support this vulnerable woman.
Thank you, Member Gav. To open the closing half from OP, I call the member of OP. Time is yours. Here.
Am I audible, Kak?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The main argument coming from opening government and closing government is that they are trying to say that there will be prenup argument before agreement, before they're entering the marriage, there will be prerequisite and so on and so forth. But we don't think this issue also still strategic, right? Because understand in the current status quo, these kinds of prenup agreement that even if you are not doing this kinds of polygamy, the harmful inside the marriage, even if you only have one wife, it's still harmful anyway. And these kinds of agreement at the end of the day will be useless anyway for these kinds of women. The sexual abusive inside of their marriage, the domestic violence and so on and so forth still exists anyway, right? Therefore, under our side of the house, why we said even if you have these kinds of there will the prerequisite inside before you enter the polygamy and so on and so forth, it's still harm anyway, right? Because we say this advocacy will not really productive, right? And these kinds of argument will be directly backlashing with the government's argument, right? Firstly, if the OG try to say that they are trying to protect the more vulnerable actor and so on and so forth, right? But we don't think this is true, because on their side, they will only extend the vulnerability of these kinds of women. We need to understand, most likely the women who enter the polygamy, they do not have economy power. Most of them, like they think that by entering the marriage life, they will get financial protections and so on and so forth, right? But we say this is very bad on their side of the house, because firstly, if you are trying to talking about the financial gain, like Ayub has already told you, whether or not these kinds of men capable or not, we say these protections will not happen anyway, right? Because before you're entering the marriage, the responsibility of this man will try to grow. Say for example, their wife, from 2 could be 3, their children could be extended and more, and so on. And meanwhile, so under our side of the house, instead of we legalizing this kinds of legalizing this vulnerable actor, woman to enter life, no thank you, it's still bad. And later on I will give what is our solution and our side of the house, right? But secondly, the moment you are trying to talking about the protections, we don't think this is also true, right? Because the woman will not have the sense of protections at all. It even triggers bigger harm inside their marriage life, because they will powerless. Say for example, the moment these kinds of legalizations exist, these kinds of women already have the legal rights to have more than one wife, and the moment these kinds of husband being abusive, too possessive, or asking something, or that say for example having a sex or asking something to the wife that these kinds of wife did not want to, the husband could simply say, or say for example that simply say, okay, so you do not want to have this to me and so on and so forth, so I could go to my second wife or my third wife. These kinds of women previously, if this is not there is no legalizations, this woman could have the power to bargain with their husband. But the moment it does not exist anymore in their life, this woman, especially the housewives, who do not have the economy power, the imbalance of power inside of the marriage, they will be less likely to have those kinds of bargaining power. It's also parallel with the example of what happened in Indonesia. The moment civil servants do not have the ability to do the polygamy, this wife, even if they do not have the works or so on and so forth, they still have the power to threat these kinds of husband if they're being abusive, or they try to cheating and so on and so forth. Because the moment they report it to the government, these kinds of husband will get punishment, it will ruin their careers and so on and so forth, right? And these kinds of things will not happen anyway on their side. But secondly, in terms of marriage life, we believe these kinds of polygamy will bad anyway, and will not contributive anyway with the movement, right? Because instead of you are legalizing the advocacy of this polygamy, you encourage more women to enter the marriage life that is not really protected enough in the current status quo. We believe under our side of house, it's better to support the rights of mother movements, where currently in the Western countries, or most liberties countries, try to pursue the mother should be paid by the government because they work as the wife and so on and so forth, right? We believe it's still more strategic and more give a lot of protections towards women, instead of you open the other gate that this marriage life actually do not really fixing maximally by the families itself, right? But lastly, but also we say we need to understand, and this polygamy really because in the values of polygamy, this is one of the core of patriarchy, because most likely you support or you serve the high tensions of man to threats the wife, right? But why this is very harmful when you are doing this in Western democracy countries, right? Because we need to understand the core of feminism, the core of these kinds of movement. When, say for example, the others, the more conservative countries thinks that my life should be like in the liberties countries when I have the rights to choose whether or not I want like to marry or not, whether or not I should child free or not, or all of the not conservative things that they always try to see the core of in the Western countries. But the difference that the moment you advocate the government to legalize this polygamy, it will be backlashing, because firstly it will be shows that this feminist is not consistent about their value, because they try to portray they want to protect women inside of the marriage life, but then they support the polygamy things. But secondly, the people around the world will see that actually polygamy is something that is beneficial for us. Polygamy will not should, because even if in Western countries they already legalize it and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, so that is why we very disagree with these motions. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. To close the whole argument of government, I call the government whip here.
POI preference is through unmuting yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, exactly because polygamy is not legalized, it means that polygamy becomes a very big problem where there's no protection for the women who experience polygamy. There's no fairness or justice inside of their the marriage, or maybe like, or some families even live in poverty because the husband is not economically independent. Same goes with the wife and etc. This is why it is very important to actually legalize this polygamy thing, because we think that opposition bench can only win if opposition are able to protect women under polygamy without legalizing, due to the fact that polygamy will still always happen regardless of what happens, due to the fact that number one, polygamy is some people think that polygamy is a belief, but number two, some people even believe that it is like the most superior way to, for example, to actually pray to your God and etc. But we think that even if like in status quo, there's opposition wants to say that there has been a campaign and etc. regarding the polygamy, we think that it is still not enough to actually protect this woman, because number one, the fact that because polygamy is still not legalized, it means that people who practice polygamy are not exposed to the society, that they do this polygamy under hiding. So you cannot be around, for example, telling people that you experience polygamy because it is illegal. But the people who practice polygamy tend to be persistent with their beliefs, so it is very hard to actually change their mindset and etc. And lastly, even if there's advocacy, women under polygamy usually does not trust feminism movement because they believe that feminism is too liberal and etc. Let's move on to opening government. We appreciate opening government for talking about inclusivity, which yes is very important in this debate. However, we think that under opening government, number one, opening government keeps championing on the idea that they want to have a legal standing for this polygamy. But the problem with opening government is that they don't have an exact forms, on a practical form, on how they're going to legalize this polygamy thing. Because the fact that my first speaker has already told you in more explicit way, and how there's going to be like, for example, the consent of the woman before doing polygamy, or for example, like we're going to do a research on whether or not the husband is capable economically or not. Meanwhile, number two, opening government also championed the idea on how legalization will actually mitigate the problems of polygamy. However, we found that there's no any urgency or any problems of polygamy that opening government really explains in that speech. Meanwhile, under closing government, you can find number one, we told you on how there's not enough protection for women who actually experience polygamy. But number two, polygamy is done by hiding, so it is very hard to detect polygamy. It means that it's hard to protect for to detect that there is a domestic abuse happening in this marriage and etc. And therefore, we cannot also provide assistance for women who experience bad things inside of their polygamy marriage. And lastly, opening government also told you about the inclusivity of feminist value. But we think that there's no practical benefits coming from opening government, right? Because under CG, we make it clear on how we're going to legalize this, like including the consent and etc. And we think that this picturization are so much more clear under CG and become more important because these benefits give direct impact in protecting women who experience polygamy, such as number one, for example, if the second wife or the third wife will be able to actually sue their husband because because they are protected by the law. It is stated by the law that they are the wives. Therefore, it is justifiable if they want to sue their husband, and this cannot happen under opposition. But number two, we are going to guarantee that the husband is going to be fair to all of their wives. Number C, we think that there's going to be a deterrent punishment under closing government for husbands who do polygamy in a wrong way. And lastly, it creates a sense of belonging. And we think that this is the most important thing because it's very important for these women who experience polygamy to have the same spirit of feminism. Like, for example, they should also believe that they deserve the same education as men, that they should be allowed to go to work, for example, because more often than not, that these women who experience polygamy do not believe on their own. They do not have this confidence to stand on their own. Let's move on to opening opposition. Number one, opening opposition talks about how polygamy is part of patriarchy that feminist movement should not support. But two response coming from CG. Number one, we say that opening opposition says themselves, right, that because it is a form of patriarchy, then it is a problem that feminist movement should care about at the very first place. Problems cannot disappear if we neglect this or forcing people to stop the polygamy because it is not feasible due to the fact that some people do polygamy because of their ideology. But exactly because it is a patriarchy, patriarchy thing to do means that women who experience polygamy thinks that they cannot go to work, that they are less superior than men, that they should always obey their husbands, for example. This is the nature of this kind of woman who experience polygamy because they more often than not, they tend to be more very religious. They don't believe feminism. And we think that if feminism movement can cater to these women who have this mindset, there's going to be sense of belonging. And this is how you're going to expose this woman to education, to work, and etc. These two reasons answers all concerns on how this is part of patriarchy. But the opening opposition also talk about how there's another more important issue that we should advocate rather than this. But we think that OO fails to explain the degree of harm of this another issue that they mean, right? Because under CG, we have explained that A, polygamy when being not legalized will be very harmful because there is no fairness inside of the marriage. But B, discussion of polygamy does not make another discussion surrounding patriarchy or sex worker or any other discussions of feminism become less important, right? Because all these issues are emerging issues anyway. Many discussion, for example, like there has been many discussion in college, campaigns, and etc. And lastly, polygamy will always happen regardless, maybe because of the belief, the ideology, then it is a very important issue because women are suffering from this. So no protection will make it even worse for this woman. Then let's move to closing opposition. Closing opposition talks about how legalizing is not strategic because regardless, harassment will still happen inside of relationships. But CG response to this is that exactly because of the harassment always happens inside of a relationship, then it will become even more vulnerable to women inside of polygamy because we're if not legalized, it means that it will be very hard for us to actually protect this woman because the fact that number one, maybe these women are shy to expose their relationship, they are shy because of the certain stigma of polygamy, but by legalizing it means that it is part of the law that it is okay to actually do polygamy. But B, if it is going to be hard because we cannot bring the case to the courts as husband and wife because not registered. For example, yes, the husband might do an abusive domestic violence, but this woman will not be able to actually sue the man as her husband because their marriage is not registered. It means that when being divorced, the husband does not have obligation to actually pay for the tuition fees of their children. The man will be easy to actually run from his responsibility. Therefore, we are very proud to propose.
Thank you, Government Whip, for that speech. To close the entire debate, I call the Opposition Whip here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
POI, you can unmute. Going to start in 3, 2, 1. OGNCG imposed an unfair burden of proof where they said that the team that can only win this debate is the team that able to protect women who are engaged in polygamy. We think that that's not the case. The debate should be about whether or not feminists should protect women that wants to engage in polygamy, whether or not feminists should spend most of their capital, most of their resources in advocating for the legalization of polygamy. Here's an important framing. Notice that because polygamy is so taboo in Western democracies, in US, for example, in order for them to be able to effectively advocate for the legalization, they have to spend most of their capital. They have to trade off another agenda. This is something that you should take. This is something that you should take into account. Right? I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. I'm going to engage the OG. Secondly, I'm going to engage the CG. And lastly, I'm going to compare with the opposing opposition. Let's go to OG first. They talk about 2 things. Number 1, they said that supporting polygamy can be a way for feminists to rebuild polygamy in a more feminist way. 3 things. Number 1, this is not going to happen because unlike what O said, we think that polygamy has been existing for so long and has been infamously known as a part of religious culture since the Mormon movement proposed it years and years ago. The religious and patriarchal value within the polygamy has been ingrained for so long, it's possible for you to detach from it. This looks like religious narratives that says all wives should succumb and be submissive from their husband to their husband when it comes to polygamy, saying that it's a form of sunnah. So it's saying that it's a form of sunnah, for example. So you cannot detach from it because the religious narratives have been existing for so long. But secondly, even if you are going to create new narrative using religious scriptures like the more progressive ones, you end up being diluted by the existing religious narratives because of course the religious followers will only believe the existing narratives because it's what they have complied to. Hence, eventually, if you can create a new perspective to the religious followers that polygamy should not be oppressive to women, or you want to modernize the feminist values, you will not be able to persuade the religious followers anyway. So it's not going to be effective. Why religious followers? Assuming that you want to protect of women in polygamy from being oppressed, you have to convince the religious followers and the most conservative ones to not be oppressive to women. Hence, if you cannot convince them, then this is going to be a lost cause anyway. Thirdly, Alberto said that the advocacy will succeed because Western democracies are progressive. This is not true. Because although they are progressive, although Western or even people in US are progressive, they're only progressive to the values that they have been exposed to. Things like LGBT, feminist, pro-choice. These are the values that have been advocated since a long time ago. This is polygamy is not like that. Because polygamy is so taboo, it's going to be a long journey for you to open and change the perspective of these people, right? Second issue, they said they talk about inclusivity of feminists. If OG and CG wants to talk about feminists should be more inclusive and respect all women's choice, we think this is something that's never been actually done by the feminists. We think feminists has the right to trade off values or agendas that are oppositional to their belief. This is something that Karima has clarified in her speech when she told you that right. I think this is something that this is something that OG considers as well in the POI, where we asked them should feminists support conservative female politicians. They said that no, we should not support agendas that hampers to feminist agenda because OG and CG still never managed to debunk the idea where polygamy cannot be detached from patriarchal values. It still stands, right? What are the past precedents of this? Feminists has actively criticized women politicians that adhere to conservatism, like Marshall Blackburn, for example. Feminists have actively criticized Kathleen Jenner for not supporting queer community. Even social movements are reluctant to enter the politics because they do not want to be associated with conservatism that prevails within the parliament. Right? But even if in Usher the House we trade off women that do want to engage in polygamy, we say that's okay because what's going to happen in opening government and closing government, it's not like this. They cannot assure that these women do want to engage with feminists because most likely women because polygamy has been associated with religious values. So most likely women that want to engage with polygamy is women that adhere to religious values. There's no assurance whether or not they want to be associated with feminist values, but that's no assurance whether or not they want to be helped by the feminists. So in your third house, there's no guarantee that your protection will work anyway. Here's the weighing between opening government and closing opposition, right? Opening government wants to protect the most vulnerable actor, which is women that being oppressed women that are being oppressed or women that is not financially secure. In our house, instead of like spending our capital to support and advocate for polygamy, in our house, what we're going to do, we're going to use our capital to advocate more about providing universal suffrage for women, providing women more education, providing women access to their sanitary needs, like advocating pro-choice, for example, advocating women's freedom and women's eligibility to enter in the workplace and having a higher position. This is something that's far more important, right? I think this is something that might be hinted by the opening opposition when they talk about there's other issues important, but opening opposition does not clarify which kind of issue that they want to protect. So the comparative here on opening government, they want to protect the most vulnerable actor, but which is women that want to engage in polygamy. But there's no guarantee that these women want to be associated with feminists. And secondly, there's no guarantee that the way they're going to modernize polygamy is going to work. There's no guarantee that they can perceive and they can persuade religious followers to adhere with the new idea of polygamy that's much more modernized. Let's go to closing government. They talk about regulation, economic problem, and oppression. Right? Here's the thing: even if you have form of consent and regulation, it's not going to be effective, because at the end of the day, religious narratives about how polygamy is a virtue and it's a form of sunnah will be overwhelming, and it will only pressure the wives to sign in the form of consent. So it will be. So even if they consent, it will be an informed consent, because it's most likely derives from the pressure to succumb. Right? This is what's going to happen even if in Western democracies. The thing with Western democracies, although they tend to be secular, religious narratives will still prevail and affect the decision making of the government. This looks like the evangelical Christians that affect and has bargaining power back in Donald Trump's era in supporting Israel, for example. Or it's like how Texas Senate or even the Republicans have been far too long capitalizing religious Christian narratives to cancel LGBT community. So even if you're inside house, yes, Western democracies exist, but that doesn't mean that doesn't assure to you that the polygamy or the legislation of polygamy in Western democracies will be capitalized by the religious communities that prevails in Western democracies. Also, the thing with economic problem and oppression, you cannot surveil the marriage element, even if just like normal marriage that happens. Yeah, KDRT still exists. There's no assurance that you can track and survey, because of course these couples most likely still wants to maintain their privacy. So there's no assurance of protection. We're very proud to propose.
All right. Thank you for the whole team for presented their speech. Since the judge will do deliberations to decide who's the winner of this round, maybe you guys can directly proceed into the main room, and then we will call you again to get back inside of this breakout room to present the verbal adjudications. Thank you.